Through the rain-slicked streets of downtown Seattle, the roar of motorcycle engines echoes like thunder. A lone figure stands motionless in a third-floor apartment window, her silhouette barely visible against the darkness. The bikers circle, below like vultures, their chrome gleaming under streetlights. They think they're hunting easy prey, a blind veteran's defenseless daughter. They don't realize she spent 15 years as a CIA operative in the shadows of Moscow. They're about to learn that some predators should never become prey. Before we dive deeper into this story of justice and retribution, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special just for you. Sarah Mitchell stands at her father's apartment window, her trained eyes scanning the street below. 20 years of covert operations have taught her to read the subtle signs that most people miss. The motorcycle gang has been circling the block for the past hour, their patterns becoming more aggressive with each pass. They're not just random bikers looking for trouble. Their movements show coordination, purpose, the kind of purpose that speaks of premeditation. Behind her, James Mitchell sits in his favorite armchair, his unseeing eyes turned toward the sound of his daughter's movements. 2 tours in Afghanistan before an IED took his sight haven't diminished his other senses. His fingers trace the familiar patterns of his service medals as he listens to the motorcycles below. They're getting bolder, he observes, his voice carrying the quiet authority that once commanded a Marine reconnaissance unit. 3rd pass in the last 20 minutes. Sarah's mind catalogues options and scenarios with the precision that made her one of the CIA's most effective operatives in Eastern Europe. The apartment building's layout, security systems, and potential defensive positions have all been assessed since she arrived a week ago. It wasn't paranoia that led her to map every escape route and identify each tactical advantage. It was experience. Experience earned through years of staying one step ahead of FSB hunters in the shadows of foreign cities. The first warning had come 3 days ago. A crude note slipped under their door, demanding protection money for James's small military memorabilia shop on the ground floor. The gang, calling themselves the Steel Vipers, had been pushing their way through the neighborhood, targeting vulnerable business owners. They thought a blind veteran running a modest shop would be an easy mark. They didn't know about Sarah. Through the raindrops on the window, Sarah catches the reflection of her father's purple heart displayed on the wall. The sight stirs something deep within her, not just duty or training, but a primal need to protect. She'd spent 15 years protecting American interests in the darkest corners of the intelligence world. Now that same determination focuses on a single point, ensuring her father's safety and dignity. The leader of the Steel Vipers, a mountain of a man who calls himself Razor, makes another pass on his custom Harley, the bike's aggressive growl, echoing off wet concrete. Sarah's trained eye catches details others would miss. The military-grade radio on his handlebars, the suspicious bulge under his leather jacket, the way his followers maintain precise spacing. These aren't ordinary street thugs. Their tactics suggest ex-military, probably dishonorably discharged, using their training for intimidation and profit. They're watching the shop's entrance, Sarah reports quietly, her voice carrying the calm precision that had guided covert teams through high-stakes operations. 2 spotters on the corners, communications gear visible. They're running this like a military operation. Her father nods, understanding the implications. His years of combat experience let him build the tactical picture from sound and description. Alone, the rain intensifies as evening approaches, but Sarah knows weather can be either ally or enemy, a lesson learned during countless operations in hostile territory. The Steel Vipers have chosen this moment deliberately, using the storm and gathering darkness to mask their movements. They expect to find a vulnerable target. Instead, they've walked into the kill zone of someone who once hunted Russian intelligence, operators through the winter streets of St. Petersburg. Sarah's phone vibrates with an incoming message, not from her old CIA contacts, but from local law enforcement. Your father's shop needs to learn about community cooperation. Accidents happen to stubborn people. The crude attempt at intimidation reveals another layer. The gang has corrupted some local officials. It's a familiar pattern, one she'd seen in dozens of cities across Eastern Europe, where criminal organizations infiltrated legitimate power structures. James shifts in his chair, his military training evident in his posture, despite his disability. "You don't have to handle this alone, Sarah," he says softly. "I may be blind, but I'm not helpless. These boys want to play soldier? Let's show them what real soldiers can do." The quiet strength in his voice reminds Sarah of why she joined the CIA in the first place, to protect people like her father who'd given everything in service to their country. Through the window, Sarah catches a glimpse of military-style hand signals between the bikers. Their coordination confirms her suspicions about their background. These men have training, but they're about to learn the difference between military tactics and intelligence tradecraft. In the world of covert operations, the most dangerous predators are the ones you never see coming. The Steel Vipers have established observation points covering all apparent exits from the building. Their positioning is professional, designed to trap their target inside while they make their move. Sarah allows herself a small, cold smile. They think they're in control of the situation, that their superior numbers and firepower give them the advantage. They haven't realized that apparent vulnerabilities can become lethal traps when turned against those who would exploit them. Another motorcycle arrives, this one carrying a passenger with specialized electronics gear. Sarah recognizes the equipment, signal jammers designed to block communications. The gang is escalating, preparing to isolate their target before striking. It's a solid tactical approach, one that would work against most opponents. But Sarah has operated in environments where communication blackouts were the norm, where survival depended on preparation and improvisation. James's acute hearing picks up the new arrival. "They're bringing in tech support," he observes, his tone carrying the analytical precision of a combat veteran, "trying to cut us off from calling for help." His hands find the small recording device hidden in his chair, one of many countermeasures Sarah had installed throughout the apartment. Even if the gang succeeds in blocking communications, evidence of their actions will be preserved. The rain drums against the windows as Sarah moves through the apartment, checking the preparations she's made over the past week. Hidden cameras cover every approach. Motion sensors guard critical points, and carefully concealed defensive positions wait to be activated. The Steel Vipers think they're dealing with a simple shakedown. They're about to discover they've targeted someone who spent years preparing contingencies for situations far more dangerous than local gangsters. Sarah's CIA training kicks in as she catalogs resources and options. The building's architecture, initially seeming to trap them, actually provides multiple tactical advantages. The old service elevator shaft, the reinforced walls from recent renovations, the interconnected ventilation system, all can be turned against attackers who don't understand the full scope of their environment. Her father's shop below, with its carefully arranged displays of military memorabilia, contains its own surprises for unwary intruders. A flash of lightning illuminates the street, and Sarah catches sight of Razor conferring with his lieutenants. Their body language shows increasing confidence, unaware that every move they make reveals more about their intentions and capabilities. In the intelligence world, information is power, and the Steel Vipers are providing a wealth of tactical intelligence with every passing moment. James stands slowly, his other senses compensating for his lost vision. Years of adaptation have turned his disability into a different kind of awareness. "They're getting ready to move," he says, reading the changing patterns of engine sounds and radio chatter from below. The rain's giving them cover, but it's also masking their coordination. His combat experience adds another layer of tactical understanding to Sarah's intelligence training. Through her thermal scope, Sarah counts 12 figures moving into position around the building. Their deployment shows their military background, coordinated teams, overlapping fields of fire, designated rally points. But she also sees the flaws in their formation, gaps that betray their experience with easier targets. They expect compliance born of fear. They're about to learn about resistance born of something far more dangerous. The determination of those who've spent there lives in the shadows. The first drops of rain make patterns on the thermal imaging display as Sarah completes her final preparations. Her father's presence behind her radiates calm confidence, reminding her of all the reasons she's chosen this moment to take a stand. The Steel Vipers aren't just threatening a business or demanding money. They're threatening the peace her father earned through sacrifice and service. That makes this more than an operation. It makes it personal. Lightning flashes again, thunder rolling through the urban canyons like nature's own warning. The next few minutes will determine more than just survival. They'll determine whether criminals can operate with impunity in this neighborhood, whether good people must live in fear. Sarah chambers around, the sound familiar and comforting. She's not just protecting her father. She's standing against the kind of predatory evil she once fought overseas, now threatening to take root in her own backyard. Sarah Mitchell's heels click softly against the hardwood floors of her father's apartment as she moves with practiced precision, each step calculated and silent when needed. The reflexes honed through 15 years of CIA operations haven't dulled in the months since she left the agency. If anything, the stakes feel higher now. In Moscow, Beijing, or Tehran, she was protecting abstract national interests. Here, she's protecting her father. James Mitchell's military memorabilia shop, Valor's Echo, occupies the ground floor of the aging brick building. For the past decade, it has been more than just a business. It's become a gathering place for veterans, a sanctuary where those who served can find understanding and purpose. The Steel Vipers' attempt to extort protection money isn't just an attack on a blind veteran's livelihood. It's an assault on a community cornerstone. The apartment above the shop reflects both occupants' backgrounds. James's military precision shows in the orderly arrangement of furniture, everything positioned to allow him to navigate confidently despite his blindness. Sarah's intelligence training reveals itself in subtler ways. The reinforced locks, the carefully positioned mirrors offering views of multiple approaches, the innocuous-looking devices that provide early warning of any intrusion. Through the Window, Sarah observes the Steel Vipers continuing their intimidation pattern. Their military background shows in their movements, but she spots telltale signs of dishonorable discharge in their undisciplined edges. These are men who couldn't maintain the standards of service, who turned their training against the very society they once swore to protect. The thought stirs something cold and focused within her. James sits in his familiar armchair, his fingers moving across the brass surface of his combat action ribbon. "Tell me what you see, Sarah," he requests, his voice carrying the same steady authority that once guided Marines through treacherous mountain passes. Not just their positions, tell me what their movements reveal about their intentions. Sarah analyzes the scene with the methodical precision that kept her alive during deep cover operations. Their leader, Razor, shows signs of special forces training, probably Army Rangers or Marine Recon. The way he positions his men suggests experience with urban combat operations. But there's sloppiness in their execution, the kind that gets you discharged. She pauses, noting new details. They're carrying modified civilian weapons, trying to look like ordinary street thugs while maintaining military capability. The rain continues its steady drumbeat against the windows as father and daughter prepare for the coming confrontation. James's unseeing eyes may not track the bikers' movements, but his other senses have sharpened to extraordinary levels since the IED blast. He catches subtle changes in the acoustic patterns of their engines, the way their radio communications create distinctive electronic signatures that his adapted hearing can detect. Sarah's mind shifts through memories of similar situations in foreign cities where survival depended on reading subtle signs and anticipating threats before they materialized. The Steel Viper's increasing aggression follows a familiar pattern: probing defenses, establishing dominance, escalating pressure until resistance crumbles. It's a strategy she's seen employed by criminal organizations across 3 continents. The shop below holds special significance for both Mitchells. For James, it's a way to stay connected to the military community he served, to help other veterans find their footing in civilian life. For Sarah, it represents everything she spent: her CIA career protecting, the quiet dignity of people who've sacrificed for their country, the small businesses that form the backbone of American communities. Through her thermal scope, Sarah tracks the gang's surveillance patterns. Their observation posts are professionally positioned, but they make amateur mistakes, breaking their own rotation schedule, failing to maintain proper communication discipline. These lapses tell her more about their capabilities and limitations than any intelligence report could provide. James's hands move to the hidden compartment in his armchair, where he keeps a modified N9 Beretta adapted for his needs. The weapon's grip has been custom textured to allow him to confirm its orientation by touch alone. "They think blindness makes me vulnerable," he says quietly. "They don't understand that losing one sense means the others compensate in ways they can't imagine." Sarah watches a new group of bikers arrive, their formation suggesting they're the gang's technical specialists. The equipment mounted on their motorcycles confirms her assessment: signal jammers, electronic warfare gear, the kind of hardware that suggests connections to black market military suppliers. "They're preparing for a sophisticated operation," she observes, "but they're broadcasting their capabilities with every piece of equipment they deploy." The apartment's defensive preparations reflect the combined expertise of its occupants. James's military experience guided the overall strategic Layout. While Sarah's intelligence background added layers of subtle countermeasures, every apparent vulnerability has been transformed into a potential advantage. Every obvious approach rigged with early warning systems. Through the gathering darkness, Sarah catches glimpses of local residents hurrying past the circling bikers, heads down, trying to avoid attention. The Steel Vipers have already succeeded in intimidating much of the neighborhood. Other businesses have quietly paid their demands, accepting the protection racket as an unfortunate cost of survival. The Mitchells' refusal to submit has marked them as examples to be made. James shifts in his chair, his posture reflecting years of combat command. They'll try to isolate us first, he analyzes, drawing on decades of tactical experience. Cut communications, prevent any call for help. Standard operating procedure for unit-level operations. His voice carries no fear, only professional assessment of the situation. Sarah's CIA training has taught her that apparent isolation can become a weapon when properly utilized. The Steel Vipers think they're creating vulnerability by cutting off outside contact. Instead, they're giving her the operational security she prefers, ensuring no civilians will be caught in the coming confrontation. The memorabilia shop below contains its own carefully planned defenses. Military displays have been arranged to channel movement along predictable paths, creating natural choke points. Security cameras disguised as historical artifacts provide comprehensive surveillance. Even the vintage uniforms and equipment serve tactical purposes, offering concealment and protection in ways the gang would never suspect. Lightning flashes illuminate the street again, revealing more details about the Steel Vipers' preparation. Sarah notes their body armor, poorly concealed under leather jackets, and the non-standard modifications to their weapons. These men have access to serious military hardware, suggesting connections to larger criminal networks. Taking them down won't just protect the neighborhood, it'll disrupt a sophisticated arms trafficking operation. James's acute hearing picks up subtle changes in the bikers' communication patterns. Their radio discipline is breaking down, he observes. More casual chatter, signs of overconfidence. His experience with combat communications lets him read volumes into these simple details. They think they've found an easy target. That kind of assumption gets soldiers killed. Sarah moves through final equipment checks with practiced efficiency. Her loadout reflects years of experience in close-quarters combat situations. No obvious weapons that might draw attention, only tools and devices that appear innocent until employed with lethal precision. The skills that once protected intelligence assets in hostile territory are now focused on defending family and home. The rain intensifies as evening deepens, providing natural cover for both sides. Sarah uses the weather to mask her own preparations, knowing that the storm will affect the gang's coordination and communication. In her experience, adverse conditions favor the defender who knows how to exploit them. Through her surveillance feeds, Sarah watches the Steel Vipers' final positioning. Their deployment suggests they're planning a coordinated breach, probably targeting multiple entry points simultaneously. It's a solid tactical approach, one that would work against ordinary civilians. But they're about to learn that some civilians have capabilities far beyond their expectations. James stands slowly, his movements precise despite his blindness. Years of adaptation have turned his disability into a different form of awareness. He moves through the apartment with confidence, checking his own preparations. The combat instincts that once guided him through firefights haven't faded. They've evolved to serve a new kind of battle. Sarah's thermal imaging shows the heat signatures of multiple weapons being distributed among the gang members. Their arsenal is impressive. Modified civilian firearms mixed with military-grade hardware. But weapons are only as effective as the strategy behind them. And the Steel Vipers are about to discover the difference between military tactics and intelligence tradecraft. The apartment's defensive preparations go far beyond simple security measures. Sarah has transformed the space into a sophisticated trap using techniques learned in some of the world's most dangerous cities. Every approach has been considered, every potential vulnerability turned into an advantage. The gang thinks they're about to teach a lesson about power and fear. Instead, they're walking into a masterclass in defensive operations. The first sign of the Steel Viper's imminent attack comes not as a roar of engines, but as an electronic whisper. Sarah's specialized equipment detects their signal jammers, activating in sequence, creating a communications dead zone around the building. The sophisticated pattern confirms her suspicions about their military background. This is professional electronic warfare equipment, not standard criminal hardware. Through the rain-streaked window, Sarah watches their technical team deploy. Signal boosters for their own encrypted communications. The setup is methodical, showing clear special forces training. They're creating a controlled communications environment, she explains to her father, her voice carrying the calm precision of a CIA field analyst. Standard procedure for high-risk urban operations. James nods, his unseeing eyes focused on the sounds of preparation below. Their engine patterns have changed, he observes, head tilted slightly. Shorter bursts, coordinated movements. They're establishing final positions. Years of leading Marines through combat have left him with an almost supernatural ability to read tactical situations through sound alone. Sarah's modified thermal scope reveals new details about the gang's deployment. Their formation suggests they're preparing for a three-point breach: main entrance, service door, and potentially the roof access. It's a textbook approach for taking a fortified position, one she'd seen used in military operations across Eastern Europe. The leader, Razor, positions himself at what he believes is a safe distance, coordinating his teams through hand signals and radio bursts. Sarah catches glimpses of military-grade body armor under his leather jacket and the distinctive outline of a modified M4 carbine in his saddlebag. This is no ordinary shakedown. They're geared up for serious combat. Through hidden cameras, Sarah monitors the Steel Viper's technical specialists setting up what appears to be a mobile command center in a nearby alley. The equipment speaks of serious financial backing: thermal imaging systems, drone control interfaces, and electronic warfare modules that would cost hundreds of thousands on the black market. James shifts in his chair, his fingers moving across his combat action ribbon as he processes the tactical information. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, he notes, his adapted hearing picking up the electronic signatures, trying to overwhelm any surviving communications channels. But they're creating interference patterns that actually help us track their movements. Sarah's CIA training kicks in as she catalogues the gang's capabilities and vulnerabilities. Their military background makes them dangerous, but it also makes them predictable. They're following standard operating procedures, expecting their target to react like civilians. That assumption is about to become a fatal flaw. The rain intensifies as the Steel Vipers move into their final assault positions. Lightning flashes reveal glimpses of their weapons, a mix of civilian firearms and military hardware that confirms Sarah's assessment of their connections to arms trafficking networks. Taking them down won't just protect the shop, it'll disrupt a significant criminal enterprise. Through her surveillance system, Sarah watches their breaching teams prepare specialized equipment. Shaped charges, door rams, and flashbang grenades, all military-grade hardware that shouldn't be available to street gangs. They're planning to hit hard and fast, she analyzes, shock and awe tactics designed to overwhelm resistance before it can form. James stands slowly, his movements precise despite his blindness. Just like Fallujah, he says quietly, remembering similar operations from his Marine days. But they're forgetting the first rule of urban combat. Never assume you know everything about your target. His hands move confidently to check his modified defensive equipment, each piece positioned exactly where muscle memory expects it. Sarah's thermal imaging picks up new heat signatures as the gang deploys what appears to be a drone surveillance system. The technology is sophisticated, but she notes critical flaws in their setup. They're relying too heavily on technical solutions, forgetting that the most dangerous threats often come from human ingenuity. The first probing attack comes as a series of targeted electronic pulses designed to knock out any remaining communications. Equipment. Sarah allows herself a small smile as her hardened systems absorb and track the attack. Every probe reveals more about their capabilities while her own countermeasures remain hidden. Through the building's security network, Sarah monitors the gang's final preparations. Their breaching teams are well equipped and properly positioned, but they've made a crucial mistake in their assessment of the target. They see a blind veteran's shop as a soft target, never considering that disability can breed different kinds of strength. James's acute hearing picks up subtle changes in the bikers' movements. They're getting cocky, he observes, noting the increasing chatter and looser formation. Success with easier targets has made them overconfident. That's when operators make mistakes. His combat experience lets him read volumes into these small details. Sarah moves through the apartment with practiced silence, confirming that each defensive position is ready. Her preparations go far beyond simple barricades or weapons. Years of CIA operations have taught her that the most effective defenses are the ones the enemy never sees coming. The Steel Vipers' technical team activates what appears to be a cellular interceptor designed to prevent any emergency calls from reaching law enforcement. It's professional equipment, suggesting connections to serious criminal enterprises, but Sarah's countermeasures are already recording everything, building evidence that will eventually dismantle their entire network. Through her thermal scope, Sarah watches their assault teams make final equipment checks. Their movements betray their background, former military, probably special forces, but with the undisciplined edges that suggest dishonorable discharge. They've maintained their tactical knowledge while losing the discipline and honor that gave it purpose. James adjusts his position slightly, orienting himself to cover the most likely breach points. His blindness, far from being a weakness, has forced him to develop an almost supernatural awareness of his surroundings. Every sound, every vibration tells him something about the developing situation. Sarah's surveillance feeds show the gang's leadership becoming increasingly confident as their preparations near completion. They've run similar operations before, always against targets that folded under pressure. That experience has led them to underestimate the capabilities of their current opposition. The rain continues its steady drumbeat as Sarah makes her final circuit of their defensive positions. Each apparent vulnerability has been transformed into a potential advantage, every obvious approach rigged with surprises for unwary attackers. The Steel Vipers think they're about to teach a lesson about power and fear. They're about to learn one about assumption and preparation. Sarah's CIA training kicks in as she catalogues the gang's capabilities and vulnerabilities. Their military background makes them dangerous, but it also makes them predictable. They're following standard operating procedures, expecting their target to react like civilians. That assumption is about to become a fatal flaw. The rain intensifies as the Steel Vipers move into their final assault positions. Lightning flashes reveal glimpses of their weapons, a mix of civilian firearms and military hardware that confirms Sarah's assessment of their connections to arms trafficking networks. Taking them down won't just protect the shop, it'll disrupt a significant criminal enterprise. Through her surveillance system, Sarah watches their breaching teams prepare specialized equipment. Shaped charges, door rams, and flashbang grenades, all military-grade hardware that shouldn't be available to street gangs. They're planning to hit hard and fast, she analyzes. Shock and awe tactics designed to overwhelm resistance before it can form. James stands slowly, his movements precise despite his blindness. Just like Fallujah, he says quietly, remembering similar operations from his Marine days. But they're forgetting the first rule of urban combat. Never assume you know everything about your target. His hands move confidently to check his modified defensive equipment, each piece positioned exactly where muscle memory expects it. Sarah's thermal imaging picks up new heat signatures as the gang deploys what appears to be a drone surveillance system. The technology is sophisticated, but she notes critical flaws in their setup. They're relying too heavily on technical solutions, forgetting that the most dangerous threats often come from human ingenuity. The first probing attack comes as a series of targeted electronic pulses designed to knock out any remaining communications. Equipment. Sarah allows herself a small smile as her hardened systems absorb and track the attack. Every probe reveals more about their capabilities, while her own countermeasures remain hidden. Through the building's security network, Sarah monitors the gang's final preparations. Their breaching teams are well-equipped and properly positioned, but they've made a crucial mistake in their assessment of the target. They see a blind veteran's shop as a soft target, never considering that disability can breed different kinds of strength. James's acute hearing picks up subtle changes in the bikers' movements. They're getting cocky, he observes, noting the increasing chatter and looser formation. Success with easier targets has made them overconfident. That's when operators make mistakes. His combat experience lets him read volumes into these small details. Sarah moves through the apartment with practiced silence, confirming that each defensive position is ready. Her preparations go far beyond simple barricades or weapons. Years of CIA operations have taught her that the most effective defenses are the ones the enemy never sees coming. The Steel Vipers technical team activates what appears to be a cellular interceptor designed to prevent any emergency calls from reaching law enforcement. It's professional equipment, suggesting connections to serious criminal enterprises. But Sarah's countermeasures are already recording everything, building evidence that will eventually dismantle their entire network. through her thermal scope. Sarah watches their assault teams make final equipment checks. Their movements betray their background, former military, probably special forces, but with the undisciplined edges that suggest dishonorable discharge. They've maintained their tactical knowledge while losing the discipline and honor that gave it purpose. James adjusts his position slightly, orienting himself to cover the most likely breach points. His blindness, far from being a weakness, has forced him to develop an almost supernatural awareness of his surroundings. Every sound, every vibration tells him something about the developing situation. Sarah's surveillance feeds show the gang's leadership becoming increasingly confident as their preparations near completion. They've run similar operations before, always against targets that folded under pressure. That experience has led them to underestimate the capabilities of their current opposition. The rain continues its steady drumbeat as Sarah makes her final circuit of their defensive positions. Each apparent vulnerability has been transformed into a potential advantage, every obvious approach rigged with surprises for unwary attackers. The Steel Vipers think they're about to teach a lesson about power and fear. They're about to learn one about assumption and preparation. Through sophisticated monitoring equipment, Sarah tracks the electronic signatures of their communications gear. The pattern reveals their tactical priorities and likely attack sequence. They're coordinating through encrypted channels, she explains to her father. Military-grade systems, but they're using predictable frequencies, another sign of their background. The rain continues its steady drumbeat against the windows as Sarah makes her final circuit of their defensive positions. Each approach has been rigged with carefully concealed countermeasures, designed to turn the gang's own tactics against them. Years of CIA operations have taught her that the best traps are the ones the enemy walks into willingly. James is enhanced. Hearing picks up subtle changes in the bikers' engine patterns. They're positioning their heavy weapons team, he reports, tilting his head to better analyze the sounds. Northwest corner, elevated position. Classic Overwatch setup. His blindness has forced him to develop an almost supernatural awareness of his tactical environment. Sarah's thermal scope reveals new details about the gang's deployment. Their formation suggests they're planning to breach multiple entry points, simultaneously using shock and awe tactics to overwhelm any resistance. It's a solid strategy against normal targets, but the Mitchells are anything but normal. Through hidden cameras, Sarah watches the Steel Vipers' technical specialists setting up what appears to be a mobile command center. The equipment is sophisticated. Thermal imaging, drone control interfaces, and electronic warfare modules that suggest serious financial backing. Every piece of gear they deploy reveals more about their capabilities and limitations. James stands slowly, his movements precise, despite his blindness. Just like old times, he says quietly, remembering similar operations from his Marine days. They think they have every advantage. That's exactly when you're most vulnerable. His hands move confidently over his defensive equipment, each piece positioned exactly where muscle memory expects it. Sarah's years of intelligence operations have taught her to read subtle signs in enemy behavior. The gang's increasing aggressiveness suggests they're preparing for immediate action, confident that their superior numbers and equipment guarantee success. That confidence is about to become their greatest vulnerability. The first direct provocation comes as a series of warning shots, deliberately fired high. It's a psychological tactic designed to demonstrate power and inspire fear. Sarah catalogues each muzzle flash, using the information to confirm her targeting data. Every attempt at intimidation provides more tactical intelligence. Through her surveillance system, Sarah monitors the gang's breaching teams as they prepare specialized equipment. Shaped charges, door rams, and flashbang grenades, all military-grade hardware that confirms their connections to serious arms trafficking. Taking them down won't just protect the shop, it'll disrupt a significant criminal enterprise. James shifts in his position, responding to changes in the acoustic environment. Their formation is tightening, he reports, his tactical awareness undiminished by his disability. Multiple teams moving into final positions. They're preparing for synchronized breach attempts. His voice carries the calm authority of someone who has faced far worse situations. Sarah's thermal imaging picks up new heat signatures as the gang deploys what appears to be a drone surveillance system. The technology is sophisticated, but she notes critical flaws in their setup. They're relying too heavily on technical solutions, forgetting that the most dangerous threats often come from human ingenuity. Through hidden cameras, Sarah watches their assault teams make final equipment checks. Their movements betray their background. Former military, probably special forces, but with the undisciplined edges that suggest dishonorable discharge. They've maintained their tactical knowledge while losing the discipline and honor that gave it purpose. James's fingers move across his modified defensive equipment, ensuring everything is exactly where it needs to be. They're using their superior numbers to maintain multiple attack vectors, he analyzes, drawing on decades of combat experience. Standard procedure for overwhelming defensive positions. But numbers mean nothing if you don't understand what you're attacking. Sarah conducts a final check of their countermeasures with practiced efficiency. Every apparent vulnerability has been transformed into a potential advantage. Each obvious approach rigged with surprises for unwary attackers. The Steel Vipers think they're about to teach a lesson about power and fear. They're about to learn one about assumption and preparation. The rain intensifies as final preparations are made on both sides. Lightning illuminates the street in stark bursts, revealing glimpses of the gang's positioning. Thunder rolls through the urban canyons like nature's own warning signal. The storm is about to be joined by a very different kind of thunder. Through sophisticated monitoring equipment, Sarah tracks the gang's electronic warfare operations. Their signal jamming is professional grade, but it's creating interference patterns that her systems can exploit. Every attempt to isolate the building provides her with more tactical intelligence. James's acute hearing picks up subtle changes in the bikers' movements. Their radio discipline is breaking down completely, he observes, noting the increasing chatter. Success with easier targets has made them overconfident. That's when operators make fatal mistakes. His combat experience lets him read volumes into these small details. Sarah moves through the apartment with practiced silence, confirming that each defensive position is ready. Her preparations go far beyond simple barricades or weapons. Years of CIA operations have taught her that the most effective defenses are the ones the enemy never sees coming. The Steel Viper's technical team activates what appears to be a cellular interceptor, designed to prevent any emergency calls from reaching law enforcement. It's professional equipment suggesting connections to serious criminal enterprises. But Sarah's countermeasures are already recording everything, building evidence that will eventually dismantle their entire network. The storm reaches its full intensity as the gang moves into their final assault positions. Sarah watches through her thermal scope as they establish their breach points, their confidence evident in their aggressive positioning. They're about to learn that some targets bite back, and that underestimating a blind veteran's daughter can be the last mistake they ever make. The Steel Vipers launch their first assault with military precision, multiple breaching teams moving simultaneously toward their designated entry points. Through her thermal scope, Sarah watches their coordinated advance, noting how their training shows in their movement patterns. The rain masks their approach, but it can't hide their heat signatures from her sophisticated surveillance equipment. James tilts his head slightly, his enhanced hearing picking up details that even the thermal imaging might miss. 3-point breach, he analyzes calmly. Main entrance, service corridor, and... He pauses, focusing on a subtle sound above. Roof, access, just like we anticipated. His years of marine reconnaissance experience continue to serve, translating acoustic information into tactical intelligence. Sarah's first countermeasure activates silently as the gang's lead element reaches the main entrance. Hidden electromagnetic pulses disable their night vision equipment, transforming their technological advantage into a sudden vulnerability. Through her surveillance feeds, she watches their momentary confusion, their formations wavering as they lose their enhanced visibility. The gang's technical specialists react quickly, switching to backup systems, but Sarah's already implementing her next countermeasure. Specialized jammers target their communication frequencies, disrupting their ability to coordinate. The Steel Vipers' military training shows as they adapt, switching to hand signals, but their synchronized assault begins to fragment. Their formations breaking down, James observes, reading the changes in their movement patterns through sound alone. They're falling back on individual unit tactics rather than maintaining coordinated action. His voice carries the quiet satisfaction of a veteran recognizing amateur mistakes in supposedly professional operators. Through her thermal imaging, Sarah watches Razor, the gang's leader, attempting to restore order. His hand signals show clear Special Forces training, but his growing frustration betrays the lack of discipline that probably led to his discharge. He's used to victims who crumble under pressure, not opponents who turn that pressure back against him. The first direct engagement comes at the service entrance, where two gang members attempt to plant breaching charges. Sarah's pre-positioned countermeasures activate with precise timing, sending cascading electrical currents through the metal. Jabor, the modified stun systems drop both attackers before they can complete their setup. James shifts slightly in his position, responding to the sound of the brief confrontation. 2 down, southwest corner, he reports with military precision. The others are hesitating now. They're not used to losing the initiative. His combat experience lets him read volumes into these small tactical changes. Sarah's surveillance systems track the Steel Vipers' reaction to their first losses. Their assault teams pull back slightly, adopting more cautious positions. Through her thermal scope, she watches their leaders conferring, likely reassessing their approach. Their body language shows increasing tension as they realize this won't be the easy victory they anticipated. The gang's technical team attempts to counter Sarah's electronic warfare, cycling through frequencies and power levels. But each attempt provides her with more information about their capabilities, while her own systems remain uncompromised. Years of CIA operations have taught her that technical superiority often breeds dangerous overconfidence. Through hidden cameras, Sarah monitors their breaching teams, regrouping for a second attempt. Their movements still show military training, but the disciplined precision of their initial assault has been replaced by something more aggressive and less controlled. Frustration is making them sloppy, exactly as she anticipated. James's enhanced hearing picks up their leader's angry commands, carrying through the rain despite their attempts at stealth. They're switching to aggressive breach tactics, he analyzes, trading precision for power, classic mistake when an operation goes off script. His voice carries the calm authority of someone who has seen such errors before, often with fatal consequences. Sarah activates her second layer of defenses as the gang launches their revised assault. Carefully positioned strobes trigger in sequence, their timing calculated to disorient without revealing defensive positions. Through her thermal imaging, she watches the attackers' coordination deteriorate further as their vision is compromised. The Steel Viper's roof team makes the next major mistake, attempting to breach the access door without proper reconnaissance. Sarah's preparations turn their own flashbangs against them, redirecting the concussive force back into their position. 3 more attackers go down, their equipment now providing valuable intelligence about their suppliers. James nods slightly as the sound of the roof team's failure reaches him. They're losing unit cohesion, he observes. Each failed attempt is making them more aggressive but less effective. They've forgotten their training entirely now. His tactical assessment is confirmed by the increasingly chaotic movements of the remaining attackers. Through her surveillance feeds, Sarah watches Razor becoming more agitated as his careful plan unravels. His hand signals become sharper, more demanding, pushing his men toward increasingly risky actions. It's the response of someone unused to resistance, someone who's forgotten that violence without discipline becomes mere chaos. Sarah's next countermeasure targets their remaining night vision equipment, using precisely tuned electromagnetic pulses to create false readings. Through her thermal scope, she watches their confusion as phantom heat signatures appear in their displays, making it impossible to distinguish real targets from technological ghosts. The gang's technical specialists struggle to compensate, their sophisticated equipment becoming a liability as Sarah's systems continue to feed them false data. Their military-grade hardware, probably stolen or bought on the black market, proves useless against someone who understands its deeper vulnerabilities. James shifts his position slightly, tracking the sound of their deteriorating assault. "They're bunching up," he reports, his tone carrying a veteran's understanding of tactical errors. Losing their dispersion, creating easy targets. They're reacting from fear now, not training. His analysis proves accurate as the remaining attackers cluster together, seeking safety in proximity. Through hidden cameras, Sarah monitors the gang's leadership becoming increasingly desperate. Their coordinated assault has devolved into individual actions without strategic coherence. The professional operators who began the attack have been reduced to angry men with expensive equipment they no longer use effectively. Sarah's thermal imaging captures their next critical mistake as they attempt to concentrate their forces for a massed assault on the main entrance. Their frustration has overcome their training, leading them to abandon basic tactical principles in favor of brute force. James's acute hearing picks up their preparations for this final push. They're committing everything to a single point, He observes with professional disapproval. Desperation tactics. They think overwhelming force can compensate for lost initiative. His combat experience tells him this decision will prove costly. Through her surveillance system, Sarah watches them gather for their final assault. Their body language has completely transformed from the confident operators who began the attack. Now they move with the aggressive uncertainty of men who know they've lost control of the situation but refuse to admit defeat. Sarah activates her final defensive sequence as the Steel Vipers launch their desperate charge. Multiple systems trigger in precise coordination, creating a cascading series of obstacles and disorientation effects. Each countermeasure is designed to compound the chaos their own actions have created. The gang's technical team makes one last attempt to salvage the operation, unleashing their full electronic warfare capability. But their sophisticated equipment, deployed without proper understanding, simply creates more vulnerabilities for Sarah's systems to exploit. James stands slowly, his movement deliberate and confident despite his blindness. They've forgotten the first rule of combat, he says quietly. Never let frustration override training. His voice carries the weight of experience, understanding how many operators have fallen to this fundamental mistake. Through her thermal scope, Sarah watches. Their final assault collapse into complete disorder. The remaining attackers, their military training completely abandoned, break formation and scatter as her defensive systems demonstrate the full cost of their overconfidence. The rain continues its steady drumbeat as the Steel Vipers' attempted show of force transforms into a lesson in humility. Their sophisticated equipment and tactical training, employed without discipline or proper intelligence, has become a demonstration of how technology and numbers mean nothing against proper preparation and skilled opposition. Sarah's surveillance. Veeds capture every moment of their defeat, recording evidence that will eventually dismantle their entire criminal enterprise. The gang that arrived expecting to terrorize a blind veteran and his daughter has instead revealed their own vulnerabilities and limitations. Through sophisticated monitoring equipment, Sarah tracks their chaotic retreat. Their electronic signatures, now erratic and uncoordinated, tell the story of an operation completely undone by its own assumptions. The Steel Vipers have learned that some targets aren't just harder than they appear. They're deadly to those who misjudge them. The aftermath of the Steel Vipers' failed assault brings a new kind of tension to downtown Seattle. Sarah watches through her surveillance network as the gang's surviving members retreat in disarray, their military discipline completely abandoned. Their sophisticated equipment, now damaged or discarded, litters the rain-slicked streets like evidence of their hubris. James remains in his position, his enhanced hearing tracking the sounds of their chaotic withdrawal. They're splitting into smaller groups, he analyzes, head tilted to catch every detail. No coordination, no rally points, complete organizational breakdown. His combat experience lets him understand the full significance of their disintegration. Through her thermal scope, Sarah monitors the gang's leadership, struggling to maintain control. Razor's attempts to restore order through aggressive commands only accelerate the collapse of their unit cohesion. His military training shows in his gestures, but panic has replaced precision as his carefully planned operation lies in ruins. The rain washes away traces of the confrontation, but Sarah's surveillance systems have captured everything. Each piece of abandoned equipment, every radio transmission, all their tactical mistakes. Everything has been recorded and catalogued. With CIA precision, this evidence will serve multiple purposes in the coming days. Sarah's monitoring equipment picks up fragmented communications as the Steel Vipers attempt to understand their defeat. Their confusion is evident in their broken radio discipline, their transmissions revealing a deeper vulnerability. They've lost more than an engagement. They've lost the aura of invincibility that their military background provided. James shifts in his chair, his other senses compensating for his blindness as he builds a complete picture of the aftermath. They'll regroup, he predicts, drawing on years of combat experience. But they'll be different now. Nothing damages an operator's effectiveness like having their own tactics turned against them. Through hidden cameras, Sarah watches the gang's technical specialists frantically collecting their damaged equipment. Their sophisticated hardware, rendered useless by her countermeasures, represents a significant financial loss. More importantly, it represents a failure of their reliance on technological superiority. The Steel Viper's retreat creates ripples through the neighborhood. Residents who had lived in fear of the gang emerge cautiously, watching their tormentors flee from unseen. Opposition. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture these moments, understanding that the psychological impact of this defeat will reshape the community's power dynamics. Sarah begins gathering intelligence from the aftermath, her CIA training automatically analyzing every detail for future significance. The gang's equipment reveals their suppliers, their tactics expose their training sources, and their communications suggest connections to larger criminal networks. Each piece of information will help dismantle their entire operation. Through sophisticated monitoring systems, Sarah tracks scattered conversations among the retreating gang members. Their confusion is evident. They can't understand how a blind veteran's daughter transformed their certain victory into complete defeat. This uncertainty will spread through their organization, undermining their ability to intimidate and control. James stands slowly, his movements precise despite his blindness. They'll try to re-establish dominance, he observes, his military experience informing his analysis. Their type can't accept defeat without attempting revenge. But they'll be operating from weakness now, reacting instead of controlling. His voice carries the quiet confidence of someone who understands conflict's deeper patterns. Sarah's thermal imaging captures the last of the Steel Vipers disappearing into the rainy night, their heat signatures betraying their hurried departure. But she knows this isn't the end. It's a transformation of the conflict. The gang will adapt, change tactics, seek new advantages. Their next move will be driven by wounded pride and desperate need to restore their reputation. The neighborhood begins to stir as news of the gang's defeat spreads through whispered conversations and cautious observations. Sarah's surveillance network picks up increasing activity as people emerge from their homes, their fear giving way to cautious hope. The Steel Viper's aura of invincibility has been shattered, changing the community's psychological landscape. Through her monitoring equipment, Sarah detects the first attempts at digital retaliation. The gang's technical specialists, having failed in direct confrontation, turn to cyber attacks and electronic warfare. But their efforts reveal more about their capabilities and connections, providing valuable intelligence for the next phase of operations. James's acute hearing picks up subtle changes in the neighborhood's acoustic environment. People are moving differently, he notes, tracking the sounds of increasing activity. Less furtive, more purposeful. They're beginning to understand that resistance is possible. His observation captures a crucial shift in community dynamics. Sarah begins implementing the next phase of her strategy, understanding that the Steel Viper's defeat creates both opportunities and dangers. The gang's influence has been weakened, but their response will likely be more aggressive, less constrained by tactical consideration. They'll seek to restore their dominance through escalated violence. Through hidden cameras, Sarah monitors the first signs of the gang's attempted recovery. Their scattered members begin regrouping at distant rally points, their movements suggesting internal confusion and blame shifting. The professional discipline that marked their initial assault has been replaced by angry frustration and wounded pride. The reign continues as Sarah conducts her initial analysis of the engagement's broader implications. The Steel Viper's defeat will ripple through Seattle's criminal underworld, challenging assumptions about territory and control. Other gangs will see opportunity in their weakness, potentially triggering wider conflicts that must be monitored and managed. James adjusts his position, his tactical mind already considering future scenarios. They'll seek allies, he predicts, drawing on his understanding of unit psychology. Their own resources have been compromised, their confidence shaken. They'll look for support from larger organizations trying to restore their operational capabilities. Through her surveillance feeds, Sarah tracks the first indicators of the gang's changing strategy. Their remaining members begin making contacts with other criminal groups, their desperation evident in their willingness to sacrifice independence for support. Each communication provides new intelligence about the broader criminal network there. Part of Sarah's monitoring systems detect increasing electronic chatter as news of the Steel Viper's defeat spreads through criminal channels. The gang's reputation for military precision and tactical superiority has been replaced by discussions of their vulnerability. This shift in perception will force them to take aggressive action to maintain their position in the criminal hierarchy. The neighborhood's transformation continues as the immediate threat recedes. Sarah's surveillance network captures small but significant changes in community behavior. People linger longer outside, speak more openly, begin to reclaim public spaces that fear had surrendered to gang control. Each change represents a victory beyond the tactical defeat of the Steel Vipers. Through sophisticated analysis tools, Sarah begins mapping the gang's likely responses to their defeat. Their military background suggests they'll attempt to restore their tactical advantage through improved equipment and reinforced numbers. But their wounded pride will push them toward faster, more aggressive actions that may compromise their operational security. James's enhanced hearing picks up patterns in the neighborhood's changing atmosphere. The community's waking up, he observes, noting the increasing sounds of normal activity. They're starting to remember what it feels like to live without constant fear. That's something the gang can't easily take back, no matter what they try next. Sarah's thermal imaging continues monitoring key locations, tracking the movement of gang members and their associates. Their behavior shows increasing desperation as they attempt to maintain control over their territory while dealing with the psychological impact of their defeat. Each action reveals more about their organization's strengths and vulnerabilities. Through her intelligence-gathering systems, Sarah detects the first signs of internal conflict within the Steel Vipers. Their leadership structure, stressed by failure, begins showing cracks as different factions argue over responsibility and future strategy. This internal discord creates opportunities for gathering more intelligence about their operations. The rain finally begins to ease as the neighborhood enters a new phase of its relationship with the gang. The Steel Viper's defeat has created a moment of possibility, a chance for the community to build resistance against criminal control. But Sarah knows this opportunity comes with risks that must be carefully managed and monitored. The gang's technical specialists continue their attempts to understand and counter the systems that defeated them. Their probing attacks provide Sarah with valuable information about their capabilities while revealing their growing frustration with conventional tactical approaches. Each failed attempt pushes them toward more desperate measures. James shifts slightly, his military training analyzing the changing tactical situation. The real battle's just starting, he notes, his voice carrying the weight of combat experience. They've lost their advantage of fear and intimidation. Now they'll have to decide whether to adapt or escalate. Either way, they're operating from weakness. Through her surveillance network, Sarah begins detecting signs of the gang's attempted reorganization. Their movements suggest they're preparing for a different kind of operation, something designed to restore their reputation through dramatic action. This shift in tactics presents both opportunities and challenges that must be carefully considered. The neighborhood's cautious emergence from fear creates new dynamics that Sarah monitors with professional attention. Community members begin sharing information more freely, creating networks of communication that can serve both as intelligence sources and potential vulnerabilities that must be protected. Through sophisticated monitoring equipment, Sarah tracks the Steel Viper's attempts to rebuild their operational capability. Their desperation shows in their willingness to expend resources and take risks they would have avoided before their defeat. Each action provides new intelligence while confirming the effectiveness of the strategy that defeated them. 2 days after the Steel Viper's failed assault, Sarah's surveillance network detects a significant shift in gang activity across Seattle. Through her sophisticated monitoring systems, she observes their remaining members making contact with larger criminal organizations, seeking alliances and support to restore their damaged reputation. Their desperation shows in their willingness to compromise their independence for immediate tactical advantages. James sits in his customary position, his enhanced hearing tracking subtle changes in neighborhood patterns. They're moving differently. Now, he analyzes, head tilted to catch every nuance. More vehicles, heavier equipment. They're bringing in resources from outside their usual operation. His combat experience lets him understand the implications of these changes. Through her thermal scope, Sarah watches new players entering the Steel Viper's territory. Their movements and equipment suggest connections to more sophisticated criminal enterprises, potentially Mexican cartels, or Eastern European syndicates. The gang's defeat has attracted predatory attention from larger organizations seeking to exploit their weakness. Sarah's intelligence-gathering systems detect increasing electronic chatter as criminal networks discuss the power vacuum created by the Steel Viper's humiliation. Each communication provides valuable information about the broader underworld landscape while revealing potential threats and opportunities. James adjusts his position slightly, processing the tactical information. They're preparing for something big, he observes, analyzing the patterns of movement and activity. This isn't just about restoring their reputation anymore. They're being pushed into a larger operation by their new allies. His military background helps him recognize the signs of escalating conflict. Through hidden cameras, Sarah monitors the gang's technical specialists, receiving new equipment and training from professional operatives. The level of sophistication suggests serious criminal backing, transforming a local threat into something more dangerous. Each upgrade to their capabilities requires corresponding adjustments to defensive strategies. The neighborhood's brief period of hope begins to shift as residents sense the gathering storm. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture increasing tension in community behavior, but also a crucial difference from before. People move with caution, but not defeat. Their recent taste of freedom having changed something fundamental in their response to intimidation. Sarah's monitoring equipment picks up fragments of encrypted communications, suggesting a coordinated effort to re-establish criminal control over the area. The operation involves multiple organizations, each seeking advantage in the disrupted power structure. Their planning reveals a level of coordination that transforms local gang activity into organized crime. Through sophisticated analysis tools, Sarah maps the emerging threat landscape. The Steel Vipers have become a catalyst for larger criminal enterprises seeking to expand their territory. Each new group brings different tactics, resources, and vulnerabilities that must be understood and countered. James's acute hearing detects subtle changes in the pattern of vehicle movements through the neighborhood. They're conducting reconnaissance, he notes, his marine training evident in his analysis. Multiple teams, professional operators. This isn't street gang behavior anymore. His observation confirms the escalation of their opponent's capabilities. Sarah begins implementing enhanced security measures, adapting her defenses to match the evolving threat. Her CIA experience helps her recognize patterns in the criminal organization's behavior, allowing her to anticipate their likely strategies and prepare appropriate countermeasures. Through her surveillance network, Sarah tracks the arrival of new criminal specialists in the area. Their movements and equipment suggest military or intelligence backgrounds, raising the stakes of the coming conflict. Each operative brings capabilities that must be analyzed and countered. The neighborhood's transformation continues as residents balance their desire for freedom against the visible signs of gathering criminal forces. Sarah's monitoring systems capture both fear and determination in community behavior, creating complex dynamics that affect tactical planning. James stands slowly, his movements precise despite his blindness. They're not just trying to restore control, he analyzes, drawing on years of combat experience. They're attempting to establish something new, something bigger than before. Our success has forced them to escalate beyond simple gang activity. Through sophisticated electronic warfare systems, Sarah detects increasing attempts to penetrate her security network. The attacks show professional expertise, confirming the involvement of serious criminal enterprises. Each probe reveals more about their capabilities while testing defensive measures. The Steel Vipers' remaining leadership adapts to their new role as junior partners in a larger criminal operation. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture their interactions with professional organized crime figures, showing how quickly tactical defeat can transform organizational structures. Sarah's intelligence gathering reveals the formation of a criminal coalition focused on controlling the neighborhood. Multiple groups coordinate resources and expertise, creating a more formidable opponent than any single gang. Each organization brings its own methods and motivations that must be understood. Through thermal imaging, Sarah tracks the movement, of weapons and equipment into strategic locations throughout the area. The hardware suggests serious investment by organized crime, raising the stakes of any future confrontation. Each cache represents both a threat and an intelligence opportunity. James's enhanced hearing picks up patterns in the increased activity. They're compartmentalizing operations, he observes, recognizing familiar military tactics. Different teams, different objectives, minimal cross-communication, professional counterintelligence measures. His analysis helps identify vulnerabilities in their opponent's improved security. Sarah's monitoring systems detect the establishment of sophisticated surveillance operations targeting key locations in the neighborhood. The equipment and techniques suggest state-level training, potentially involving former intelligence operatives now working for criminal enterprises. Through hidden cameras, Sarah observes the criminal coalition conducting detailed analysis of their previous defeat. Their study of the engagement reveals dangerous competence, showing how quickly they adapt and learn from failures. Each lesson they draw must be anticipated and countered. The neighborhood's brief taste of freedom has created new challenges for the criminal organizations attempting to reassert control. Sarah's surveillance network captures increasing instances of subtle resistance, showing how community dynamics have shifted since the Steel Viper's defeat. Sarah's intelligence gathering. Operations reveal the coalition's emerging strategy. They plan to establish control through a combination of overwhelming force and sophisticated manipulation of community dynamics. Each aspect of their approach requires specific counter-strategies. Through her monitoring equipment, Sarah tracks the arrival of professional enforcers brought in by the criminal coalition. Their movements and methods suggest extensive experience in urban warfare, raising the tactical complexity of the situation. Each operative represents a specific type of threat that must be analyzed and neutralized. James shifts in his position, his military training helping him process the changing tactical environment. They're creating layers of control, he analyzes, recognizing patterns in the activity. Physical presence, electronic surveillance, community infiltration. This is how professional organizations establish long-term dominance. Sarah's thermal imaging captures increasing night operations as the criminal coalition prepares for major action. Their activities show careful planning and resource allocation, demonstrating the serious intent behind their efforts to control the area. Each operation provides intelligence about their capabilities and intentions. Through sophisticated analysis tools, Sarah maps the coalition's command structure and communication patterns. The organization shows professional complexity with redundant systems and careful compartmentalization. Each layer of their operation presents both challenges and opportunities. The neighborhood's response to these gathering forces creates complex tactical considerations. Sarah's surveillance network detects both fear and defiance in community behavior, requiring careful balance. In planning defensive strategies, each aspect of community dynamics affects operational possibilities. Sarah's monitoring systems track the coalition's efforts to establish electronic dominance over the area. Their technical capabilities suggest serious investment in surveillance and control technologies, creating new challenges for maintaining secure communications. Each system they deploy must be understood and countered. Through her intelligence-gathering networks, Sarah detects the first signs of internal tension within the criminal coalition. Different organizations compete for influence while maintaining superficial cooperation, creating vulnerabilities that can be exploited. Each conflict provides opportunities for gathering intelligence and disrupting operations. James's enhanced hearing picks up subtle changes in the pattern of criminal activity. They're getting impatient, he notes, analyzing variations in operational tempo. Different groups have different timelines, different priorities. That creates pressure points we can use. His observation identifies crucial weaknesses in the coalition's coordination. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture the increasing sophistication of the coalition's preparation. Their operations show careful attention to detail and contingency planning, demonstrating the professional nature of the emerging threat. Each aspect of their preparation requires corresponding defensive measures. Through thermal imaging, Sarah monitors the coalition's deployment of advanced surveillance systems throughout the neighborhood. Their technical capabilities exceed normal criminal organizations, suggesting serious backing from larger enterprises. Each new system adds complexity to the tactical environment. The rain continues intermittently as Sarah analyzes the gathering forces arrayed against them. The criminal coalition's preparation shows both impressive resources and dangerous competence, transforming a local conflict into something approaching urban warfare. Each development requires careful analysis and strategic response. 3 days after the criminal coalition begins its preparations, they launch their first coordinated offensive against the neighborhood. Sarah's surveillance network detects multiple teams moving simultaneously, their operations showing professional precision that confirms the involvement of serious organized crime. Through her thermal scope, she watches as former military and intelligence operatives deploy sophisticated equipment and tactics. James sits motionless in his command position, his enhanced hearing tracking the complex patterns of the approaching forces. At least 4 distinct groups, he analyzes, head tilted to catch every nuance. Different training backgrounds, different operational styles, but coordinating with professional efficiency. His combat experience helps him understand the full tactical implications of this evolved threat. Sarah's monitoring systems detect the activation of advanced electronic warfare equipment as the coalition attempts to establish control over the battle space. Their technology suggests serious investment by major criminal enterprises, creating new challenges that exceed normal gang-level confrontations. Through hidden cameras, Sarah observes the coalition's technical specialists deploying surveillance, countermeasures that reflect state-level training. Their methods show dangerous competence, demonstrating how quickly they've adapted to previous failures. Each new tactic requires immediate analysis and response. James shifts slightly, processing the acoustic information from multiple approaches. They're using layered operations, he notes, recognizing familiar military strategies. Primary assault, teams, technical support, overwatch positions, and reserve forces. This is professional urban warfare. His analysis reveals the escalating nature of the conflict. Sarah's intelligence gathering systems detect encrypted communications, suggesting the coalition has prepared multiple contingency plans. Their operational security shows significant improvement, indicating serious professional guidance in their planning and execution. Each layer of their strategy presents new tactical challenges. Through sophisticated monitoring equipment, Sarah tracks the deployment of what appears to be former special operations teams. Their movements and equipment suggest extensive combat experience, transforming the threat level from criminal enforcement to military-grade opposition. Each team brings capabilities that must be countered. The neighborhood holds its breath as the coalition's forces move into position. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture the community's tension, but also a crucial difference in their response. The recent memory of successful resistance has created a resilience that the criminals' psychological warfare can't easily break. Sarah's thermal imaging reveals the coalition's tactical innovations as they establish their assault positions. Their formation shows careful analysis of previous failures, implementing countermeasures against the strategies that defeated the Steel Vipers. Each adaptation requires corresponding defensive adjustments. James's acute hearing picks up subtle details in the coalition's deployment. They're maintaining strict communications discipline, he observes, noting the change from previous encounters. Short transmissions, coded language, professional protocols. These aren't street thugs anymore. His military experience helps identify crucial differences in the opposition's capabilities. Through her surveillance network, Sarah monitors the coalition's technical specialists, activating sophisticated electronic warfare systems. Their equipment suggests connections to international arms dealers, providing capabilities that exceed normal criminal organizations. Each new system presents specific threats that must be neutralized. Sarah begins implementing her enhanced defensive protocols, adapting her countermeasures to match the coalition's improved capabilities. Her CIA experience helps her anticipate their likely tactics while preparing appropriate responses to their enhanced technological threat. The coalition's first probing attacks come simultaneously from multiple directions, testing defensive capabilities while gathering tactical intelligence. Through her monitoring systems, Sarah tracks their methodical approach, recognizing patterns that suggest professional military planning. James stands slowly, his movements precise despite his blindness. They're trying to map our response patterns. He analyzes, drawing on years of combat experience. Each probe is designed to reveal defensive capabilities and positions. Classic special operations reconnaissance tactics. His understanding helps identify the true purpose behind their initial movements. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture the coalition's careful coordination as they escalate their probing attacks. Their operations show sophisticated battlefield management, with different teams executing coordinated actions under central command. Each movement reveals more about their organizational structure and capabilities. Through advanced electronic warfare systems, Sarah detects increasing attempts to penetrate her security network. The attacks show professional expertise, confirming the involvement of former intelligence operatives. Each probe provides information about their technical capabilities while testing defensive measures. The coalition's command structure demonstrates impressive adaptation as they analyze defensive responses. Sarah's monitoring equipment picks up rapid tactical adjustments based on real-time intelligence gathering. Their professional competence transforms the engagement from simple combat to complex military operations. Through thermal imaging, Sarah tracks the coalition's deployment of specialized equipment throughout their area of operations. Their hardware suggests serious financial backing, providing capabilities that match or exceed military-grade systems. Each piece of equipment represents both threat and opportunity. James's enhanced hearing detects subtle changes in the coalition's operational tempo. They're preparing for their main assault, he observes, recognizing patterns in their movement. These probes were just preparation. The real attack will be something much more sophisticated. His analysis helps anticipate the next phase of their operation. Sarah's intelligence gathering reveals the coalition's emerging assault plan. Their strategy shows careful analysis of urban warfare principles, implementing lessons learned from military operations in multiple combat zones. Each aspect of their approach requires specific counter-strategies. Through hidden cameras, Sarah observes the coalition's forces moving into their final assault positions. Their deployment shows professional attention to tactical details, creating overlapping fields of fire and mutual support positions. Each team's positioning must be analyzed and countered. The neighborhood's resistance to intimidation creates additional complexity in the coalition's operations. Sarah's surveillance network detects increasing frustration in their tactical adjustments as community response fails to follow expected patterns of fear and submission. Sarah's monitoring systems track the coalition's technical specialists implementing advanced electronic warfare measures. Their capabilities suggest access to military-grade equipment and training, creating sophisticated challenges for maintaining defensive systems. Each new technical threat requires immediate countermeasures. Through sophisticated analysis tools, Sarah maps the coalition's command and control structure during active operations. Their organization shows professional complexity, with redundant systems and careful coordination between different operational elements. Each layer of their command structure presents both vulnerabilities and threats. James shifts in his position, his military training helping him process the evolving tactical situation. They're implementing a full-spectrum assault plan, he analyzes, recognizing familiar patterns: electronic warfare, physical assault, psychological operations, all coordinated under professional command. His observation reveals the comprehensive nature of their attack. Sarah's thermal imaging captures the coalition's final preparations as they ready their main assault force. Their movements show careful attention to tactical principles, implementing lessons learned from special operations experience. Each element of their preparation requires corresponding defensive measures. Through her intelligence-gathering networks, Sarah detects the coalition's attempts to establish complete battlefield dominance. Their operations show sophisticated understanding of urban warfare principles, creating complex tactical challenges that exceed normal criminal activities. The rain intensifies as the coalition launches their coordinated main assault. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture their professional execution, showing how quickly they've evolved from simple gang tactics to sophisticated military operations. Each aspect of their attack demonstrates dangerous competence that must be matched and exceeded. Through advanced monitoring systems, Sarah tracks multiple assault teams moving with precise coordination. Their operations show careful integration of different capabilities, creating a complex threat that requires equally sophisticated defensive responses. Each team's movements reveal both capabilities and vulnerabilities. James's enhanced hearing provides crucial tactical intelligence as the assault develops. They're maintaining perfect operational tempo, he notes, analyzing the patterns of their attack. Different teams executing coordinated actions with professional precision. This is exactly how Special Operations Forces conduct urban warfare. His experience helps identify critical aspects of their assault strategy. Sarah's defensive systems engage automatically as the coalition's attack reaches full intensity. Through her surveillance network, she monitors their immediate tactical adjustments, noting how quickly they adapt to unexpected resistance. Each response provides information about their capabilities while testing defensive preparations. The neighborhood's transformation becomes evident as the coalition's assault fails to create expected panic. Sarah's monitoring systems detect community resistance manifesting in subtle but significant ways, creating additional complications for the attacking forces. Through sophisticated electronic warfare systems, Sarah counters the coalition's attempts to establish technical dominance over the battle space. Their capabilities show professional expertise, but each attack reveals vulnerabilities that can be exploited. The engagement evolves into complex electronic warfare that matches physical combat in intensity. The criminal coalition's sophisticated assault plan begins to unravel as Sarah's defensive systems engage their forces systematically. Through her thermal scope, she watches their professional coordination deteriorate when their advanced equipment fails against her countermeasures. Years of CIA experience lets her recognize the exact moment when tactical superiority shifts from the attackers to the defenders. James tilts his head slightly, his enhanced hearing tracking the changing patterns of combat. Their command structure is fragmenting, he analyzes, noting the increasing chaos in their communications. Different teams losing synchronization, falling back on individual tactics instead of coordinated action. His combat experience helps him understand the significance of this breakdown. Sarah's surveillance network captures the coalition's mounting frustration as their carefully planned operation encounters unexpected resistance. Their professional training shows in their attempts to adapt, but each adjustment reveals new vulnerabilities that her systems exploit with precise efficiency. Through sophisticated monitoring equipment, Sarah tracks the disintegration of the coalition's electronic warfare capabilities. Their technical specialists struggle against countermeasures they can't understand, their military-grade hardware becoming a liability as her systems turn their own technology against them. James shifts in his position, reading the tactical situation through sound alone. They're losing operational cohesion, he observes, his marine reconnaissance training evident in his analysis. Each team reacting independently now, no central coordination. This is how professional units fail when their command and control breaks down. The neighborhood witnesses the coalition's defeat with growing confidence as Sarah's defensive strategy systematically dismantles their assault. Through hidden cameras, she monitors the transformation of professional operators into increasingly desperate attackers as their sophisticated plans collapse. Sarah's thermal imaging reveals the coalition's forces abandoning their carefully planned positions, their retreat showing none of the discipline that marked their initial deployment. Each tactical failure compounds their disorganization, creating a cascade of chaos that spreads through their entire operation. The coalition's command structure proves unable to maintain control as their communication systems fail under Sarah's electronic warfare. Through her monitoring systems, she tracks their increasingly frantic attempts to restore coordination, each effort providing new opportunities for exploitation. James's acute hearing picks up the growing discord in the coalition's ranks. Their professional facade is cracking, he notes, analyzing changes in their communication patterns. You can hear the panic replacing training, the frustration overwhelming discipline. His combat experience lets him recognize the signs of imminent collapse. Sarah's intelligence-gathering systems capture the moment when the coalition's sophisticated assault transforms into uncoordinated individual actions. Their military training becomes a liability as different teams, unable to maintain coordination, begin interfering with each other's operations. Through advanced electronic warfare systems, Sarah continues dismantling the coalition's remaining technical capabilities. Their equipment, despite its professional quality, proves vulnerable to countermeasures designed specifically for their operational patterns. Each system failure further erodes their tactical effectiveness. The neighborhood's resistance grows, stronger as residents witness the coalition's defeat. Sarah's surveillance feeds detect increasing instances of subtle defiance, showing how quickly fear can transform into determination when professional intimidation proves ineffective. Through hidden cameras, Sarah monitors the coalition's technical specialists, abandoning their sophisticated equipment as her countermeasures render it useless. Their retreat marks a crucial turning point, demonstrating how dependent their operation had become on technological superiority. James stands slowly, his movements precise despite his blindness. They've lost more than just this engagement, he analyzes, drawing on years of combat experience. They've lost the myth of invincibility that professional operators depend on. That's not something you recover from easily. Sarah's monitoring systems track the coalition's forces withdrawing in increasing disorder. Their retreat shows none of the professional coordination that marked their arrival, revealing how quickly military discipline can dissolve when carefully planned operations fail completely. Through sophisticated analysis tools, Sarah maps the complete breakdown of the coalition's command structure. Their organization, initially impressive in its complexity, proves vulnerable to systematic disruption of its key components. Each failure cascades through their entire operation. The coalition's attempt to establish dominance through superior technology and training instead becomes a demonstration of their vulnerabilities. Sarah's surveillance network captures their growing realization that professional capabilities mean nothing against properly prepared opposition. James's enhanced hearing tracks the dissolution of their tactical unity. Different teams blaming each other now, he observes, noting the increasing hostility in their communications. This is what happens when professional operators face failure they can't understand. The entire organization starts to tear itself apart. Sarah's thermal imaging reveals the final stages of the coalition's defeat as their remaining forces abandon any pretense of coordinated action. Their withdrawal creates chaos that spreads beyond their immediate operation, threatening the stability of their entire criminal enterprise. Through her intelligence-gathering networks, Sarah detects the first signs of larger consequences spreading. Through Seattle's criminal underworld, the coalition's defeat challenges fundamental assumptions about professional operators' superiority over local resistance. The neighborhood's transformation accelerates as the coalition's forces retreat in disorder. Sarah's monitoring systems capture increasing confidence in community behavior, showing how successful resistance against professional intimidation creates lasting changes in social dynamics. Through sophisticated electronic warfare systems, Sarah continues tracking the coalition's attempts to salvage some advantage from their defeat. Their desperation shows in increasingly reckless technical operations that only compound their tactical failures. The rain continues as Sarah analyzes the full impact of the coalition's defeat. Their operation, despite professional planning and sophisticated equipment, has become a lesson in the limitations of military tactics against properly prepared defensive positions. James shifts slightly, his military training helping him understand the broader implications. This changes the entire dynamic, he analyzes, recognizing patterns from his combat experience. They came in thinking superior training and equipment guaranteed victory. Now they have to completely rethink their approach to civilian resistance. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture the coalition's leaders, struggling to maintain any semblance of control over their retreating forces. Their authority, based on professional competence and technological superiority, crumbles as both prove inadequate against determined opposition. Through her monitoring systems, Sarah tracks the rapid dissolution of the coalition's organizational structure. Their defeat creates internal conflicts that threaten their entire criminal enterprise, spreading chaos through carefully established hierarchies. The neighborhood begins reclaiming spaces abandoned by the retreating coalition forces. Sarah's surveillance network detects immediate changes in community behavior, showing how quickly confidence replaces fear when professional intimidation proves ineffective. Through thermal imaging, Sarah monitors the final stages of the coalition's withdrawal. Their movement patterns show complete abandonment of military discipline, revealing how thoroughly their professional training has been compromised by unexpected defeat. James's acute hearing picks up crucial details in the chaos of their retreat. They're not just withdrawing, he observes, analyzing the patterns of their movement. They're fragmenting as an organization, different factions already positioning themselves for internal power struggles. Sarah's intelligence gathering reveals the coalition's defeat, spreading ripples through criminal networks across the region. Their failure challenges fundamental assumptions about the effectiveness of professional operators against civilian resistance, creating uncertainty that threatens established power structures. Through hidden cameras, Sarah observes the immediate aftermath of the coalition's retreat. Their abandoned equipment and scattered forces create visible evidence of defeat that transforms community perceptions of professional criminal organizations. The neighborhood's success against sophisticated opposition creates new dynamics that Sarah monitors with professional attention. Her surveillance systems detect emerging patterns of community organization that suggest lasting changes in local power relationships. Through advanced electronic warfare systems, Sarah maintains vigilance as the coalition's forces complete their withdrawal. Their defeat has created vulnerabilities in criminal networks that extend far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Sarah's monitoring equipment tracks the dissolution of professional criminal operations throughout the area. The coalition's failure demonstrates weaknesses in their entire approach to territorial control, creating opportunities for broader community resistance. The rain begins to ease as Sarah assesses the full implications of their victory. The defeat of professional operators by prepared civilian resistance creates precedents that will reshape criminal organizations' tactics throughout the region. Through sophisticated analysis tools, Sarah maps the cascading effects of the coalition's defeat through various criminal enterprises. Their failure compromises carefully established relationships between different organizations, creating instability that threatens entire criminal networks. James's enhanced hearing continues tracking subtle changes in the aftermath of combat. The neighborhood sounds different now, he notes, analyzing acoustic patterns. People moving with more confidence, less fear. That's the real victory, not just defeating them, but changing how people respond to intimidation. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture the transformation of professional defeat into community empowerment. Each sign of renewed confidence represents a significant shift in power dynamics that criminal organizations will struggle to counter. 1 week after the criminal coalition's decisive defeat, Sarah's surveillance network detects fundamental changes rippling through Seattle's underworld. Through sophisticated monitoring systems, she tracks multiple criminal organizations struggling to adapt their strategies as news of their professional operators' failure spreads through established networks. The ripple effects transform local power dynamics in ways that extend far beyond tactical victory. James sits in his familiar position, his enhanced hearing tracking subtle changes in neighborhood patterns. The whole acoustic environment has shifted, he analyzes, head tilted to catch every nuance. People are moving differently, speaking more openly. Fear's been replaced by something stronger: community confidence. His combat experience helps him recognize the deeper significance of these changes. Sarah's thermal imaging captures increasing activity as residents reclaim public spaces previously controlled by criminal organizations. Through her surveillance feeds, she observes the neighborhood's transformation from fearful submission to cautious empowerment. Each small act of defiance building collective strength. Through hidden cameras, Sarah monitors the disintegration of criminal influence throughout the area. Professional operators, their aura of invincibility shattered by defeat, struggle to maintain authority over territory they once controlled through sophisticated intimidation. Each failure compounds their loss of influence. James shifts slightly, his military training helping him process the evolving situation. They're losing more than just tactical control, he observes, analyzing patterns of criminal activity. Their entire operational model is breaking down. Professional intimidation doesn't work once people stop believing in their superiority. Sarah's intelligence-gathering systems detect increasing chaos in criminal hierarchies across Seattle. The coalition's defeat challenges fundamental assumptions about military expertise's effectiveness against civilian resistance, creating uncertainty that threatens established power structures. Through sophisticated electronic warfare systems, Sarah tracks desperate attempts by criminal organizations to restore their operational capabilities. Their efforts reveal growing awareness that traditional tactics, even when supported by professional training and advanced technology, may no longer guarantee control. The neighborhood's transformation accelerates as residents witness the lasting effects of successful resistance. Sarah's monitoring equipment captures increasing instances of community organization, showing how tactical victory against professional operators creates lasting changes in social dynamics. James's acute hearing picks up crucial changes in criminal communication patterns. Their command structures still fragmenting, he notes, analyzing intercepted transmissions. Different factions fighting for control, unable to restore professional discipline. That's what happens when supposed experts face unexpected defeat. Sarah's surveillance network reveals multiple criminal enterprises attempting to distance themselves from the coalition's failure. Their reactions demonstrate how quickly professional reputation can crumble when sophisticated operations prove ineffective against prepared opposition. Through advanced analysis tools, Sarah maps the dissolution of criminal power structures throughout the region. The defeat of professional operators creates precedents that force entire organizations to reconsider their approach to territorial control, spreading instability through carefully established hierarchies. The neighborhood begins developing its own security networks, inspired by successful resistance against professional intimidation. Sarah's monitoring systems detect emerging patterns of community organization that suggest permanent changes in local power relationships. Through thermal imaging, Sarah tracks the withdrawal of criminal operations from previously controlled territories. Their retreat shows none of the professional discipline that once marked their presence, revealing how thoroughly their tactical superiority has been compromised. James stands slowly, his movements precise, despite his blindness. This goes beyond simple victory, he analyzes, drawing on years of combat experience. We've shown them something they never expected, that all their training and technology can't overcome committed community resistance. Sarah's intelligence gathering reveals broader implications, spreading through criminal networks nationwide. The defeat of professional operators by civilian defenders creates case studies that challenge fundamental assumptions about military expertise's effectiveness in criminal enterprises. Through sophisticated monitoring equipment, Sarah tracks multiple criminal organizations attempting to adapt their strategies. Their efforts show increasing awareness that professional military capabilities may actually become liabilities when faced with properly prepared civilian opposition. The neighborhood's success inspires similar resistance in surrounding areas. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture increasing instances of communities challenging criminal control, each act of defiance building momentum that threatens established power structures. Through hidden cameras, Sarah observes criminal organizations struggling to maintain authority without relying on failed intimidation tactics. Their attempts to adapt reveal fundamental weaknesses in professional military approaches to civilian control. James's enhanced hearing tracks the evolution of community confidence. People aren't just losing their fear, he observes, analyzing social interactions. They're learning something more important, that professional intimidation only works when you believe in the intimidator's superiority. Sarah's monitoring systems detect increasing sophistication in community defensive networks. Residents begin applying lessons learned from successful resistance, creating sustainable security measures that don't rely on professional military expertise. Through advanced electronic warfare systems, Sarah maintains vigilance as criminal organizations attempt to restore their influence. Their efforts reveal growing recognition that traditional military tactics may actually hinder effective operation. In civilian environments, the rain returns as Sarah analyzes long-term implications of their victory. The defeat of professional operators creates precedents that will influence criminal organizations' tactical decisions throughout the region, forcing fundamental changes in their approach to territorial control. Through sophisticated analysis tools, Sarah maps emerging patterns of community empowerment. Each successful act of resistance builds collective confidence that makes professional intimidation increasingly ineffective, creating permanent changes in social dynamics. James shifts in his position, his military experience helping him understand broader implications. They're facing a problem they can't solve with training or technology, he analyzes, recognizing familiar patterns. Once people stop believing in professional superiority, all that military expertise becomes useless. Sarah's surveillance feeds capture multiple criminal organizations withdrawing from previously controlled territories. Their retreat demonstrates growing awareness that professional military capabilities may actually become disadvantages when faced with determined civilian resistance. Through her intelligence-gathering networks, Sarah detects fundamental changes in criminal operational planning. Organizations begin questioning the value of military expertise in civilian environments, creating uncertainty that threatens established power structures. The neighborhood's transformation continues as residents develop sustainable security measures. Sarah's monitoring systems track increasing sophistication in community organization, showing how tactical victory against professional operators creates lasting changes in social dynamics. Through thermal imaging, Sarah observes criminal organizations struggling to maintain operational effectiveness without relying on military tactics. Their attempts to adapt reveal fundamental weaknesses in professional approaches to civilian control. James's acute hearing picks up crucial changes in criminal communication patterns. Their entire command structure's transforming, he notes, analyzing intercepted transmissions. They're realizing that military-style operations actually make them more vulnerable to civilian resistance. Sarah's surveillance network reveals multiple criminal enterprises attempting to establish new operational models. Their efforts show increasing recognition that professional military training may create predictable patterns that determined defenders can exploit. Through sophisticated electronic warfare systems, Sarah tracks desperate attempts by criminal organizations to restore their influence. Each failed effort demonstrates growing awareness that traditional military tactics may actually hinder effective operation in civilian environments. The neighborhood's success continues inspiring similar resistance in surrounding areas. Sarah's monitoring equipment captures increasing instances of communities challenging criminal control, each act of defiance building momentum that threatens established power structures. Through hidden cameras, Sarah observes emerging patterns of community organization that make professional intimidation increasingly ineffective. Residents begin applying lessons learned from successful resistance, creating sustainable security measures that don't rely on military expertise. James stands, slowly, his combat experience helping him process evolving situations. This changes everything for them, he analyzes, recognizing fundamental shifts in power dynamics. They invested everything in professional military capabilities, never considering those same capabilities might become their greatest weakness. Sarah's intelligence gathering reveals broader implications, spreading through criminal networks nationwide. The defeat of professional operators by civilian defenders creates case studies that challenge basic assumptions about military expertise's effectiveness in criminal enterprises. Through sophisticated analysis tools, Sarah maps the dissolution of criminal power structures throughout the region. Each successful act of resistance demonstrates weaknesses in professional military approaches to civilian control, forcing fundamental changes in organizational strategy.